All rise.
Thank you. Are there any matters that we need to get on the record before bringing the jurors in on behalf of the state?
No, Your Honor.
On behalf of the defendant?
No, Your Honor, thank you very much.
Thank you. All rise for the jury. All right, you may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. No. Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Kennedy.
Good afternoon.
I'm Larry Thomas. We've never met, have we? I know this is probably tough, but I need to ask you a couple questions. Kind of clarify your testimony and what you remember about this.
Yes, sir.
If I ask you a question and you don't understand, just stop me.
Roger that.
And I'll try to rephrase it or do something to make you understand the question better.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Mr. Kennedy, you indicated that, well, I'm going to take you back first. I'm going to take you back to January 28th of 2018. Were you working then, sir? Were you employed?
Yes, I was employed.
Okay. Where were you working?
I was working for Avail Vapor. It's a e-liquid manufacturing company.
And where was that?
So I started off near downtown, and then I ended up working in Powell from that point forward.
And how often did you work? Was it a 40-hour week or?
Yeah, I would say 46, 48 hours a week. Yeah.
Do you remember the conversation about when you were in Athens with your sister? Were you working then when you were living in Athens?
Yes, sir. I was working in Athens.
And what were you working? What were you doing there?
I had two jobs. I was a bouncer at a bar, Cat's Eye Saloon, and I also worked for BP, which is like a convenience store, gas station type deal.
And if correct me if I'm wrong, when you moved to Columbus, Rachael Anderson already lived here.
She was there, yes, sir.
Okay, and you knew where she lived.
I didn't know where she lived prior to the move, but when Haley got us both in contact, I did. Mm-hmm.
So when you were indicating to these folks that you helped move some of her stuff, you didn't move her stuff to Columbus.
So I moved some of her things after she was already there.
Okay. You've had 2 years to think about this case, right?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you now, you were interviewed by police back in 2018, is that correct?
I was only interviewed by police one time for this particular case, and it was in the back of that wagon they had me in.
And do you know when that was?
It was on the day of the incident. And that was the only time I had discussions with police directly.
Do you remember who the police officer was or the detective that conducted the interview?
I believe the detective was Tim Welsh, and then there was another gentleman, but my memory is a little bit frazzled of being in the back of that wagon that day.
You thought you were being illegally detained?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Prior to coming here today, did you have an opportunity to review that interview?
No.
You've never heard your interview with Detective Welch?
I haven't heard the interview. I've read a testimony from my day of.
So you read a transcript of your interview?
Yes, sir.
John, can I have a minute?
Yeah, you may.
Once you read that summary, did that refresh your recollection as to the statements you gave on the day you were interviewed by Detective Welch?
Yeah, it brought everything back.
Do you recall what you told Detective Welch when he asked you what time Rachel came and picked up her key?
From what I read, I said it was, in that statement, I said it was 9:30. But that wasn't an exact representation because of the state of mind I was in at the time.
Tell the members of the jury, what state of mind were you in?
I had the feeling of impending doom. I was scared. I didn't know how to react or about what I had seen. You know, I was scared.
Were you high?
No, I was not. I had just woken up.
You had just woken up?
Yeah, whenever I went over there to the property that morning, I was only awake for, I would say, maybe 2 hours.
Did you get high back then?
Do you mean the day of?
Yeah, or let's go back to, I think Mr. O'Brien talked about a party you were at, and I believe you already said, yes, I was smoking weed.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So you were getting high back then, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it wasn't just weed, was it?
It was just marijuana I was getting high on. Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, Mr. Kennedy, what is a molly?
Molly, I believe, is like pure ecstasy, I suppose.
And is your testimony here today that at the party for Rachel, y'all weren't doing mollies, or you weren't doing mollies?
No, sir, nobody was at that party. The only thing that we did at that party was we smoked marijuana and we were drinking.
What about acid?
That was not a current thing at that party, no.
But you have done acid, say, in the year of 2018.
Yes, sir.
And you've done mollies in the year of 2018.
Yes, sir.
And you smoked weed in 2018.
Yes, sir.
It's just you didn't smoke weed at that celebration. I mean, you didn't have acid or mollies at that celebration
No,
for
sir.
the birthday. Are they hallucinogenics? Do they make you hallucinate?
Acid is hallucinogenic, yeah.
What about Sherm? What about Sherm? Do you know what Sherm is? Sherman?
I have no idea what Sherm is.
You ever heard of weed being dipped in formaldehyde?
No, sir.
You never heard of that?
No, sir.
Drinking alcohol?
Repeat the question?
Were you drinking alcohol?
The day of the party?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this. You said y'all were good friends. Did you ever go over Rachel by yourself?
There was only one time that I had been over there by myself, and she was not present. There was an issue with her fish tank that I was going to take care of, which failed, which resulted in us getting rid of the fish tank.
So what you're saying is that during this time that you've known Rachel and her living on Allegheny, it's your testimony that you were never there with her alone.
No, sir.
Did you get high over there?
We smoke weed over there, yes, sir.
Is that all you did over there?
That's all I have done over there. I have drank alcohol and smoked weed at that property.
You don't get high now, do you?
I still smoke marijuana, yes.
Still smoke? But you don't do any other drugs?
No, not ever since Rachel passed.
So other than that, you still drink a little bit,
Still drink a little bit.
but other than that, you're clean. A little marijuana, a little alcohol.
Yep, a little bit of both.
Did your appearance change from back in January of 2018 until you're here today?
Did you ask if my parents changed?
Your appearance, I'm sorry.
Oh, my appearance?
Your appearance.
Yes, sir. I've dropped 43 pounds. I cut my hair off, cut off a lot. I mean, I've completely changed my life.
Completely changed.
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Already shown. Approach you with what's been marked Defendant's Exhibit 2. Mr. Kennedy, tell me what's in that.
That's me and my ex-wife at a Planned Parenthood event. It was like a donation event for it, yeah.
And that's how you used to look?
Yeah.
Your Honor, asked to publish.
Any objection?
Not from the state.
Okay, you may.
Can everybody see? You might have eyes like Larry. And that was the old Jonathan Kennedy.
Yes, sir. That's me and my ex-wife there.
You and Tina no longer together?
No, this destroyed our relationship and every beautiful thing we had with it.
Y'all moved together to Colorado and broke up out there, or did you break up here?
We broke up out there.
You remember when y'all broke up?
Yeah.
When?
June 13th of this past year.
Okay. I'm gonna take you back to the morning of January 29th. No, strike that, strike that. Let me ask you what you meant when you told the members of this jury that Rachel did not trust that area. What did you explain to the members of the jury what you meant by that?
It's a terrible, unsafe area that no one should be living at. It's filled with crime and drug addicts and people that appear to be criminals. It's a dangerous representation of what Columbus really is, and no one should be living in or near that area to prevent their own safety of the people that they love.
So when Rachel called you, well, let me ask you this. Straight. You know about the lock situation on her apartment, right?
What do you mean?
How you lock it. In other words, if I leave her apartment, right, do I need a key to lock it?
No, because you can lock it from the inside. You can unlock it with a key or lock it from the inside.
Let me make sure that you understand that I'm not confusing you. So, if I leave her house and there's nobody inside, can I lock the door without a key?
From the outside of the building?
Yeah.
No.
You need a key to lock it, right?
Yes.
And I think even you wondered.
So the front, let me restate that. From the front door.
Yeah.
Now, anytime I was leaving, Rachel would, of course, walk us out and lock the door behind us. But if my memory serves correct, there are two locks. There's a deadbolt, which can only be accessed from the inside, and there's a door handle lock, which, of course, if you leave and were to lock that and shut it behind you, it would be locked.
Okay. That's your memory. So when Rachel left, even if she didn't have a key, she could lock her apartment, right?
She locked all the locks every time.
Here's my question. When you had talked to Rachel on the 28th, and she was coming to get a key, you didn't indicate to the police in your interview that there was no way she could lock her house without that key?
No, there was not a statement, and I was belligerently sad at that time. I was answering what was being asked and not saying more than needed to be said at the time.
Let's assume for a minute that she needed that key to lock her door when she left. in that neighborhood, and she called you, would you have taken her key?
Well, I wouldn't have had the key, sir. That was on Tina.
Was Tina with you
At what time?
when she asked for the key?
Yes, Tina was with me. And she asked Tina for the key and came over and got it.
So you didn't have no concerns about her being out asking for a key on January 28th
Well, of course
of
I had.
2018?
Of course I had concerns. I mean, she didn't have her key. She had to come over to get her key to get in,
To get in, right.
yeah.
Unless she left it unlocked.
Unless she had it unlocked, sir. Yes, that's correct.
And you didn't have no problem having her come to your house to get the key from Tina, as opposed to you taking the key over so she wouldn't have that unsafe condition.
I didn't think somebody in the world was capable of doing something like that. So no, I didn't have that immediate concern. I was also about to fall asleep on the couch. We kind of.
David, I'm sorry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the property was locked, and that's why she needed her key to get back in. I also don't know the specifics of if it was unlocked or locked already.
What if you thought that that was the case? Would you have taken her key?
Of course, I would have taken her the key.
When you were interviewed by the detective, did you tell them about anything missing from Rachel's apartment?
Do you mean after she was deceased?
When you talked to the detective, how many detectives did you talk to, Mr. Kennedy?
I talked to 2 detectives.
Okay. Did you tell any of those detectives that something was missing from Rachel's apartment?
Yeah, a jar of marijuana was missing.
And you told these folks today that there were other items missing and disturbed, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Now, you didn't never tell that to any detective, did you?
No, sir.
Is that something that just came to your memory, or?
No, that day I was very upset. I just found my friend murdered in her residence. So my first concern wasn't to tell him about a picture missing on the wall.
Your first concern was to tell him about the jar of marijuana that was missing, right?
I was the first thing that came to my head when they asked me the question if anything was disturbed. But I was just trying to be honest.
You didn't tell them if anything was out of place other than the fact that the only concern you had was a jar of marijuana, and you told them that if they found that marijuana, they could solve this case. Is that correct?
I don't recall that being exactly correct.
You gave Rachel scales in which to weigh marijuana, didn't you?
Yes, for her.
Come here, closer witness, Your Honor.
You may.
State's Exhibit A60. Have you ever seen that?
That's the scale I gave to her.
That is the scale?
That's the scale I gave to her, yep.
Okay. Now, Posh,
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
You may.
I'm old school. I know y'all, I don't see this up there, right? This is the scale that he's pointing to. Can everybody see? Okay? Nod your head if you, and I'll keep moving. What kind of scale is this, Mr. Kennedy?
I don't exactly recall what type of scale it is.
Is it electronic?
Yes, sir, it is a digital scale.
Everybody? And let me show you what's also under, see number 8? Again, for identification purposes, State Exhibit A60. See the number 8? Mm-hmm. What's under that number 8?
A bowl.
Tell the members of the jury what's the bowl.
You pack marijuana into it. That is a glass piece. It has a carb. You can cover the carb and release it whenever you're ready to hit it.
Is this got marijuana in it now? Can you tell from this picture? Here, you can hold if you want to.
Oh, I don't want to touch anything.
Okay.
No, it doesn't look like there's marijuana in that bowl.
Did you give Rachel that? Oh, here's the bowl, ladies and gentlemen. May I publish, Sean?
Is that the same one?
Yes.
60, yes.
This is the bowl. Can you see in the back row? I'm always. Y'all see it? See it under number 8? Under number 8. I might not be pointing at the right thing. Everybody see it? Did you give her that bowl?
Not that I recall, sir.
Were y'all smoking on that bowl?
We've hit that bowl, yes.
I think you indicated that you entered her apartment with the property manager.
Yes.
The black lady, her name was Lisa Richardson. You probably didn't know her.
I don't know her, yeah, but yes, that sounds accurate.
And I believe you indicated that. Did you go to your right or did you go up the steps when you entered? If you remember.
When I entered the property, I went straight through to the kitchen. I overlooked the kitchen. I went into the laundry room, which is, if you enter the kitchen, it would be on the left side, and then you would take a left in that far corner. That is the laundry room. I proceeded to go back out to the hallway. There's a closet that separates the kitchen from the staircase, and I opened that closet, and then I proceeded to go up the stairs.
So, when confronted by, and I believe Detective Welch was asking you, did you go directly to that closet? You got defensive, didn't you?
No, sir, I was very upset.
Did you call the property manager a bitch? That bitch don't know what she's talking about?
Yeah, potentially. She has no idea what she was talking about at that time. And she is the one that stated that I went straight to the door. I did not state that.
And let me ask you this, and then you also indicated that you couldn't go in the bathroom to check the towel because she blocked your view and she blocked your entrance.
She moved out of the way, and I did proceed to check the bathroom.
But that's not what you said, is it?
I mean, I don't recall.
You don't have a smartphone, do you?
Yes, sir, I do.
Do you ever recall if you gave the detective your numbers?
Like for my phone?
Yeah, for your phone?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, he did have my phone number.
Did you give him your phone for any forensic examination?
They took the phones at the scene. Other than that, I'm unaware.
They took your phone too?
Yeah.
Okay. I believe you indicated that, maybe I misunderstood, but you indicated that you and, I believe you said John Anderson, planned a birthday party, got together and planned a birthday party for Rachel?
So everyone was planning the birthday party. Everybody involved wanted to give her a nice time. So it wasn't specifically John. John was in town, and we had worked on that.
So when you say everybody, what do you mean?
Ryan, Justin, John, me, Tina, The people that were at the party had planned the party.
So anybody who was in on the plan of the birthday party would not be surprised or shocked by the fact that you're having a birthday party for Rachel, would it?
No.
This wouldn't have been a surprise or shock to anyone, would it?
For having a birthday party for her?
Yeah, her first birthday party ever, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
She's never had a birthday party before, according to you. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's what she told me. She hadn't had a group of friends throw her a party like that.
You didn't say a group of friends. You said she never had a birthday party in her whole life, right?
Are you talking about the night that I first talked to the detective?
Yes.
I mean, if we're talking verbatim, then I guess I did say that to him then. Mhm.
Did you ever tell Rachel to move out that neighborhood?
Yes,
And I believe you indicated to the officer or the detective that there was drug dealers living on Rachel's left, if you're
Yes.
looking at her building,
yes,
right?
yes, sir.
And then you also said that there were creepy people, guys who peeked in her window, living on her right.
So
Is that correct?
there is a creepy individual that she made it aware that lived next to her that made her feel uncomfortable. That's all I know about that situation.
I'm just asking you what you told the detective. Did you tell the detective that there was a creepy guy?
I don't recall.
Okay. And it was a bad neighborhood, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
When you went upstairs and opened the closet, your number one concern was you touching the wires that bound Rachel, wasn't it?
That was not my number one concern whatsoever. It was a concern that I had, and I made the officers perfectly aware that I had touched that cable in order to pull her body out of the closet.
You said you had a smartphone?
Yes, sir. I had a flip phone and a smartphone that didn't have service at the time.
When this happened and you got on the phone, who was the first person you called?
Like after it had happened?
Yeah.
What,
When
after
you got
I
over
found
there
her?
on the 29th, you talking on the phone. Who are you talking to? Who's the first person you called?
The first person that I called back was Kim. The second person that I called was Tina. And then I just kept going down the list. I called my dad. Yeah, I just called the people nearest to me. Kim was helping me with it, and I called her back right up. She was the first person that I called.
You didn't know Kim, did you?
No.
But you knew Tina, your wife.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. You said you had a smartphone. Did you take any pictures of the birthday celebration at all?
No, I didn't have any pictures.
You didn't take any pictures?
No, I wasn't into photography at that time or capturing moments like that.
Are you on Facebook?
Yes, sir.
You on Instagram? You know what Instagram is?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm now a photographer, and I post stuff up there all the time.
John, excuse me, Mr. Kennedy, who is Angel and Jason Williams?
Angel was Rachel's friend, and Jason, I believe, is her husband.
And they were friends of Rachel's?
Yes, sir.
I believe you indicated that, and correct me if I'm wrong, did you say that Rachel had called the police on several occasions?
I don't recall. Well, so she had called, I know she's called the police one time while being there due to noise violations to the left door of, the door left of her property.
Okay.
But that's all I know about police being called out there.
So you don't remember her calling the police for anything else as far as you know?
No, sir.
Do you know what stalking is?
I have no idea what stalking is. What do you mean, like, in what reference? Like a stalker?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what a stalker is.
And you and Rachel didn't have any sort of personal relationship, did you?
Besides being friends, no, not whatsoever.
Nothing intimate?
Nope, never.
I believe you indicated, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but while talking to the police, to Detective Welch, you indicated that you thought that the person who did this was waiting on her or waiting for her.
Yes, sir.
What did you mean? Explain that to me. What did you mean by that?
The scene that I walked into and the property that I went to, it looked like she was being waited on in the property.
And it was your, Mr. Let me ask you, so you go to the apartment because your friend is missing, right?
Yes, sir.
And your first reaction is to go to the kitchen, is that correct?
Well, my first reaction was to look for my friend. I didn't have a direct instinct to go to the kitchen. I was just searching one floor at a time.
Okay. Now, that's not a real big apartment, is it?
No.
Living room is, how big would you say?
Like, from the edge of that desk to the edge of this wall, to the edge of that desk to here,
Okay.
probably that's bigger, maybe, about the same size.
Have you ever spent the night over there?
Me and Tina have, yes.
Do you know what time you got back from Athens?
I'm not entirely sure, but if I had to give you an estimate, I would say probably between like 4:30 and 5:30.
In the interview with Detective Welch, you said that when you gave times, you were spot on.
Well, I was not.
But you were not, were you?
I must not have been.
Okay. But you said that, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
I think you were asked by Mr. O'Brien about a candle that was. Did Rachel light a candle?
She used candles at the property, yes.
Tell the members of the jury, why would she normally light candles?
She liked the scent. She felt like it let off a good vibe, and it made her feel it was something she liked. It was, you know, she would always have a candle lit. If not a candle, she would light an incense, but it was more or less candles.
So she didn't light the candle when she smoked weed. She just lighted the candle for the.
When we smoked weed, she would light a candle.
And when you went over there on the 29th, there wasn't no candle lit.
When I went, no, not that I recall.
Okay.
Not when I had entered the property.
Did y'all smoke cigars together? Did you smoke cigars?
I was the cigar smoker.
You weren't?
I am a
You
cigar
are?
smoker.
What kind of cigars you smoke?
You know, anything from Monte Cristo, anything from like an Asher most of the time, Gold Label. Now, if we're talking a cigar as in like a Swisher, those would be to roll blunts. I definitely would never smoke that.
Tell the members of the jury, you talk so fast, I didn't understand.
So I am a cigar smoker. If it's in reference to any cigar at the property, it probably would have been like a Swisher Sweet or a Game Swisher that you would roll a blunt with by hand.
So if I was to, again, show you what's been marked as State Exhibit A60, and I see these cigar blunts, or these, what those have been blunts? You see those?
Those would be blunts. This is an actual cigar.
That's an actual cigar?
That's an actual cigar, and I'm pretty sure she got that from her dad, but I'm not entirely certain.
We can lose that, sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, for identification purposes. I know I should apologize because you can't see where he's pointing, but State Exhibit 6A60.
A matter of fact, I do know for certain that that was, sorry.
Well, that, you do it if you want. So,
Could I So that cigar, this one here, I went with, I believe it was Tina, Rachel, and her dad to a cigar shop, and he purchased her that cigar.
so I just saw identification purposes. When you're pointing to the actual cigar on State Exhibit A60, you're talking about under the number 4.
Yes,
right
sir.
to the right of number 4.
Yes, sir.
And when you're talking about blunts, and so the jury's clear, blunts is where you mix it with the marijuana and smoke it?
Well, you don't mix the tobacco with the marijuana. You
Tell them
just
how you do it.
so you split it with like a cigar cutter or with your fingers. You empty the tobacco out because it's not even worth smoking, and then you get a little bit wet. You put weed inside of it, and then you flip it shut.
Okay, and when you said that are the, on top of the number 7.
On top of the number 7, yes, sir.
Okay? So, here I am again. On top of the number 7 are the blunts, which he just described to you. And the real cigar is by number 4. Blunts by number 7. Real cigar is by 4. It's hard to see.
Okay.
Blunts on top of 7. Real cigar by number 4. Okay, everybody see? Rachel was known for having good weed, wasn't she?
No.
She didn't have good weed?
She wasn't known for having good weed.
Okay. Her weed wasn't no good?
No.
Okay. Did you give her weed that was better?
So the particular situation pertained to the person that she got weed off of. It was
Yeah.
terrible, and he skimped her all the time and wouldn't give her the proper amount. So whenever I would go pick up my marijuana, we would put our money together, and we would purchase it in bulk together.
And that was good weed, right?
I mean, it's no weed's good here, but it was kind of in the middle. It was all right.
Okay. Your Honor, could I have 1 minute, please?
May?
Mr. Kennedy, you talked to Sean Griggs
In what context?
on the morning of the 29th.
Yes.
And did Sean Griggs tell you to check the closet?
No.
Were you and Sean talking about drugs?
If anything, it would have been weed, but I didn't really associate with him whatsoever.
Well, you were asked by Detective Welch what the conversation was about, and you didn't answer. So were you and Sean discussing that Rachel had weed in her apartment prior to allowing permission for people to go in and search?
No.
That discussion never came up?
No. Me and Sean didn't talk like that. He was Rachel's boyfriend.
But he called you, I think you said.
We contacted each other that morning. I was trying to get access to go into the residence to make sure she was okay.
Did you and Sean get in an argument?
No, sir.
Tell us what you meant when you said, or you called Rachel a virus. What did you mean by that?
What do you mean?
Did you call Rachel a virus?
I don't know, not that I recall.
Did you and Rachel have any arguments?
Me and Rachel had never been into a confrontation ever.
So no neighbors or anybody would ever say that they thought you were her boyfriend and y'all were out there arguing?
No, there would be no way.
Okay. When the police talked to you, did you tell them you had 2 phones?
Yes, sir.
You told them you had a flip phone?
Yeah, not immediately. They took my smartphone from me and left my flip phone on me. But they also, yeah.
So that people and me, we're clear, on this day, you had 2 phones. You had a flip phone and a smartphone.
Yeah, my flip phone was $10 a month, and I couldn't afford a smartphone. So I just used it on Wi-Fi.
And on the day when the police asked you, you gave them the information for the smartphone, but not the information for the flip phone.
The only information I had was the information for the flip phone, seeing as how the smartphone didn't even have service active on it. So I only had 1 phone. Another one was basically a Wi-Fi tablet.
On the night in question, at the party, you kept dialing one number. Mr. Kennedy, whose number is 1-330-646-2269?
That's my phone number.
And whose number is 1-330-503-2269? 6585.
Oh, boy, I don't know.
Well, you called that number like 50 times. You don't know whose number that is?
I mean, I would have to check my phone to look, but I don't know.
I mean, you call them at 12 o'clock at night and on. You're dialing that number, or that number's dialing you, calling you, and you don't know who that is or what number that is?
So I believe that phone number in that case, so that would be the night of the 28th?
Yes.
So I believe I was calling Ryan Weber that night. It would have to be Ryan Weber or Justin Weber.
And were they at the party?
Yes, sir.
So they're at the party, but you calling them? Is that how y'all do it?
So that night of the party, they ended up leaving, and I was very drunken on the floor.
Last question. Have you ever tried weed dipped in embalming fluid?
No.
Why you shaking? Is that bizarre?
That sounds very bizarre.
That's two questions, huh? Okay.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Thank you. I have nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Kennedy, the night of the birthday party, did others that were there at your apartment leave and go to a club that night?
Yes, sir.
Did you go with them?
No.
Did you stay at your apartment?
Yes, I did.
And that was because you felt you were under the influence?
Oh, I definitely was unable to move.
And the others came back, however, to the apartment that night, did they?
As far as I know, yes, but I would like to make it aware that I was unconscious.
Okay. When you got up in the morning, were people there that had spent the night?
When I woke up that morning, Ryan was, that girl that was with him, and Tina was, yeah.
How about John and Rachel? Had they spent the night at the birthday party at your residence out in the west side?
I don't have the proper memory to remember if Rachel and John were there first thing when I woke up, but I believe that they were, yes.
Now, you mentioned, or Mr. Thomas asked some questions about this Marilyn Monroe picture that was on the wall in Rachel's apartment. That was hanging on a wall, is that correct?
Yeah, and it's just something I vaguely noticed. For all I know, it was still there.
That's my point. You don't know whether or not that was taken or was knocked off the wall and found by the police on the floor, do you?
I know it wasn't where I'm used to seeing it. That's the best answer, I guess.
Okay. These other drugs, this litany of drugs Mr. Thomas asked you about, Molly, Shrum, ecstasy, LSD, were any of those drugs possessed, taken, or used the night of the birthday party?
No, sir. We did try to get a hold of Molly, but we weren't able to, so we didn't have any.
And have you ever taken any of those drugs at Rachel's apartment?
No, not me.
In fact, you gave your phone to the police, correct, upon their request on the 29th?
Upon their request.
And did you give them a DNA sample too?
I don't recall. I think so, but I don't recall.
Do you remember further investigation after you talking with Detective Welsh in the car that day?
What do you mean? Like we had contact, but there wasn't anything really further that they needed from me at that point.
Detective Welsh talked to you on the 29th in the cruiser?
Yeah.
The apartment complex. Did you talk to them after that or have contact with them after that?
I believe there was a few phone calls asking questions, and I just answered what they had asked.
Have you ever been in that car or Rachel's that Mr. Thomas asked you about?
Yes, I had been in Rachel's car before.
And those blunts that he pointed out in one of those photographs, what's a blunt?
A blunt would be an old cigar, wrapper that has weed inside of it.
And how do you prepare that with the marijuana and the cigar?
So you just crush down the marijuana, split the Philly, disregard and throw out the tobacco, put marijuana in the place of that, and you just like flip it over the whole way through, dry it off, and light it when you're ready.
And did Rachel smoke blunts?
She was unable to roll a blunt, so I normally would roll the blunts for her.
And you believe those ones that were on the table that Mr. Thomas pointed out in the photograph, do you believe that if they were there at Rachel's house that you would have prepared those blunts?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned, or Mr. Thomas asked about a bowl and a jar. If I understood your testimony, you said that a jar of marijuana was missing from the apartment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that separate from this bowl Mr. Thomas asked you about?
Separate.
There are two items that were used to keep marijuana in.
Mm-hmm. Now, the thing that was missing was the jar.
Okay. Mr. Thomas asked you if you and or Tina had spent the night at Rachel's apartment before. How many occasions do you think you and Tina would have stayed at Rachel's apartment?
Honestly, we didn't stay there that much. I would say in total, no more than like 5 or 6 times in total.
And would Rachel periodically stay at your and Tina's apartment out west?
Yes, she would stay there quite often. Mhm.
I have no other questions. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Recross?
No, it's not 1 minute.
You may.
So, just briefly, and I believe you answered to a degree, I just want a clarification. Did you, Rachel, and your wife, Tina, have LSD at Rachel's?
No, sir.
Did you have LSD at your house?
No, sir.
So you, Rachel, and Tina never had a trip, a LSD trip?
We have had an LSD trip.
And that was at your house?
It was at my house, but not during that time.
It was January, wasn't it?
I believe it was January.
After you had passed out and you woke up and Justin was still there, right? Justin didn't go with them either, did he? You and him stayed at your apartment?
I believe so.
That's the one you were calling?
Yeah, so I was very intoxicated that night. So I'm not entirely sure.
So you're passed out. You don't know what drugs anybody was doing after you passed out.
There were no drugs in my. I know it was still there.
That's my point. You don't know whether or not that was taken or was knocked off the wall and found by the police on the floor, do you?
1 or 2. I left and I was very intoxicated. After everybody left, I was still there for a little while awake, and then I woke up and it was morning.
Okay. So after that, when they went to the club and came back, you don't know what drugs were being used, do you?
No, sir. As far as I'm aware, no other drugs were being used whatsoever.
Okay. And people have used other drugs in the past, right? Just not on this day, right?
Just not on that day.
Not on their birthday celebration, right?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And I believe you indicated that you gave the flip phone to the police, or do you know what day you gave it to them?
The day that they got my phone was the day of this incident.
Okay, on January 29th. And as of today, as we sit here today, they never actually have looked at your smartphone, had they?
No, I don't think so. They took them both that day, and then I got it back 6 hours later when they let me out of that wagon.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. All right, Mr. Kennedy, you can step down, sir. You're not to discuss your testimony with anyone while this case is still pending.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, counsel, please approach.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, State may call the next witness.
Thank you.
Your Honor, state will call Officer Frank Sclafani.
Good afternoon, sir. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer unto God or under the pains and penalties of perjury? You may be seated. Ms. Madden. There you go. Okay, it's important that you speak up loud enough for the ladies and gentlemen to hear you.
Yes, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Okay, for the record, if you would please state your name, spelling your last.
Frank Sclafani, Sclafani.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, officer.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Is your name Frank,
Yes,
or is it Francis?
birth name's Francis, but known by Frank.
Just
However you want to, you know,
And Officer Scafani, who are you currently employed by?
City of Columbus.
And in what unit?
Currently work for the Mobile Crisis Response Unit.
And you were at the City of Columbus for the police department?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and where do you work right now, you said?
I work in the Mobile Crisis Response Unit.
And what is that?
We respond to individuals in crisis or try to assist people who are going through crisis and provide resources and follow-ups.
Excuse me a second. Could you slide up just a little bit closer to the mic, please?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm sorry. You may-
Sorry, everybody's got to make sure they hear you.
That's okay. Sorry if I wasn't, loud enough.
Are you a little nervous?
A little bit, yeah.
I promise they don't bite.
That's okay.
Officer, how long have you worked for Columbus Police Department?
14 years,
And how long have you been on your current assignment?
since October
Of,
of 2019.
okay. What did you do before that?
I worked for Zone 2 Day Midwatch on the east side.
And you're gonna have to explain to us, what is Zone 2?
Zone 2 is just the area that I was working is known as the east side.
The east side, you said?
Yeah.
Can you give us kind of some main intersections?
Broad and James was the main intersection for the precinct I was working mostly, which is 9 precincts. Each zone consists of 4 precincts, but I typically worked on 9.
Okay. And you said day watch, what does that mean?
We overlap first shift and second shift. This way runs can be covered while they change out
What were your hours?
from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m.
And officer, could you explain to ladies and gentlemen, what are your duties as a patrol officer?
We respond for calls for service and assist anywhere we're needed.
When you say calls for service, could you give us some examples of what those would be?
They can be checking the well-being of somebody or domestic or missing persons or narcotics complaint. It could be a disturbance of any kind.
Okay. And were you working in Zone 2 on day watch on January 29th of 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know Cardinal Creek Apartments?
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Could you explain to us what the nearest major roadway that everybody would know?
James Road.
James Road?
Yeah.
Okay. Were you called out to Cardinal Creek on the 29th to do a well-being check?
Yes.
Could you explain how you got that call?
Was dispatched along with another officer, and it was, I guess, checking the well-being of somebody who hadn't shown up for work.
When you say dispatched, what does that mean?
That means radio calls us over our radio, I guess over the radio, and they just give us, tell us that we're needed in a specific area for whichever the call for service is.
Okay. And was this around lunchtime, you think?
Early afternoon,
Because what were your hours again?
9 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay. Kind of right in the middle
Yeah.
of your shift?
Yeah.
What is a well-being check?
Well-being check can be a lot of things. Sometimes either juveniles are being left unattended, an elderly that they haven't heard from in a while, or in this case, somebody hadn't shown up for work. I want to make sure they're okay.
Was this normal to get these requests?
Yes, ma'am.
What would you normally do if you're asked to check on the well-being of somebody?
We try to make contact at the door, check to see if the residence is secure. And if anybody's outside, we can ask, hey, have you seen this person? That's typically it.
And on January 29th, 2018, were you alone? Were you with a partner?
I was riding by myself, but had responded on this particular run with another officer who was also working one officer unit.
What was the first thing you did when you arrived at Cardinal Creek?
I don't recall specific details. It's been a couple of years, but I know the other officer was already on scene. He was speaking to the gentleman outside when I pulled up.
Do you remember vaguely what this gentleman looked like?
Remember he was shorter, possibly business attire, nothing else specific.
Okay. You said you thought the other officer was talking to him?
Yes, ma'am.
Did that individual state a concern to you?
Yeah, he just reiterated what was on our dispatch run, which is details of that also come up on a computer we have in the cruiser. That he had some concerns that she didn't show for work, and this was not like her to at least call or reach out if something like that was going to happen.
Did you also learn of a fire hazard potentially?
Yeah, I guess he had pointed out that there was a candle burning inside, which he pointed out to the other officer, and we discussed that.
And then did you go to the leasing office?
I did, actually. While the other officer stood by with him, I went to the leasing office. And
Okay. Tell me, why'd you go to the leasing office? Why'd you just break down the door?
we didn't have any probable cause to break down the door, just candle burning inside. Nobody answering the door is not enough circumstance to do that. But enough for us to say there's concern. It looks like somebody may have possibly been home at one time, and to talk to the leasing agency, who else might be on the lease that can confirm she's okay.
And generally, when you're asked to do these well-being checks and it's a condo or an apartment, do you go to the leasing agent?
Not typically.
Okay. Why did you do it in this case?
The overly concern of that, and plus, having a candle burning inside. I just want to make sure, I guess, if there was somebody else who could confirm she was okay, to kind of give her job a peace of mind. Maybe there was some miscommunication with them.
Okay. When you went to the leasing office, did you have a conversation with the leasing agent?
I did.
And what did you ask her to do?
I asked her if anybody else was on the lease besides the one we were looking for. And she said she was able to, she pulled it up, the lease agreement, and there was another name on there.
Okay, and in your presence, did she call somebody?
She did.
Okay. Did you kind of have to wait around for a little bit?
Yeah, we were in there for a little while. I don't know exactly how long, but yeah, she made a phone call.
Okay. And at this point, did you still have any reason to go into the home?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So tell me what happened after she got off the phone the second time. Did you guys go to the apartment?
Yes.
Tell me what happened then.
Prior to leaving there, she was talking to, I guess it was a boyfriend who was also on the lease, and I guess it took a little convincing to say, hey, they just want to make sure that, she's okay if she's in there, she's not hurt or fell or whatever. We have a candle burning at the same time, and then I'm pretty sure he was pretty specific to saying, because she then put him on speaker, and he's like, well, you can go in and check it. And so we just stood by and didn't feel like we were, didn't want to push the issue. I was satisfied with the fact that he was willing to at least let her go check.
Okay, and did she go into the apartment in your presence?
She did.
Did you go into the apartment at that point?
No, ma'am.
From what you can remember, I know it was a couple years ago, but did she have to use a key?
I believe so.
Okay. About how long do you think she was in there?
I couldn't say. It couldn't be more than 5 minutes.
Okay. Did she come back out with anybody?
No, ma'am.
Okay. What'd you do at that point?
At that point, we explained to the gentleman that was there, we kind of went above and beyond to make sure, and we can't, press the issue anymore. If they hear anything else or he has any more information, then please feel free to give us a call. But we cleared the run at that time.
Okay. You say cleared the run. What does that mean?
I'm sorry. The dispatch run. So usually we just refer to it as the run, and then from that point we were clear from our duties at that moment.
Okay. Later on that afternoon, around 3 o'clock, did you actually go back to that apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me what you were doing at the time.
Well, I was currently dispatched on a different run. I had just been dispatched, and I heard another run go out, and they mentioned Allegheny Avenue. So I looked it up, and it was where I was earlier in that day. So I called dispatch on the radio, and hey, do me a favor, can you take me off the run I'm on and put me on the other run, and so I can follow up and see what's going on.
Okay. And then did you have occasion to speak with anybody from the young woman's family?
I did. At that moment, I pulled over, and I called the caller on the run, which I believe is the mother.
Okay. Without saying what she said, did she seem concerned?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What did you do at that point?
I just responded directly to the address on Allegheny.
Okay. When you got there, do you remember, was anybody standing outside the apartment?
Yeah, there was the leasing agent was out there, and there was a gentleman, and I believe there was a third person that was with them.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to keep your voice up, because if
Yeah.
I'm having trouble, I know.
I'm trying to recall at the same time, so I apologize if I drop my voice down a bit.
No problem. So you said the leasing agent and another gentleman.
Yes.
Is this the same or a different gentleman than the one earlier in the day?
No, the guy from earlier wasn't out there this time. It was.
So you pull up, what happens next?
At that moment, I had pulled up, and after speaking to the mother, what I did was, because of the mother's concern, and I can hear that in her voice, I'm a parent as well, so being out there the second time and having these extra concerns, after I'd pulled up and they were kind of waving me down, I was on the radio with our communications channel, which is a different channel on our radio that we can communicate with to they provide other services for when we have somebody who's missing, or there's somebody it's more than just checking the well-being at this point. We feel that this person might be missing. So I'd asked them to run a cell phone ping, and that'll generate the area of where her cell phone might be if it was active at that time. So while I was doing that, if I'm free to speak, I guess the leasing agent had opened the door, unbeknownst to me at that time, that they were going to actually go in at that time. But I still didn't have anything to go inside. So as they went in, and I was doing that, that's when the breast had unfolded.
So you said I'm going to back you up a little bit. The
Absolutely.
communication channel. Explain to me a little bit more. You said run a cell phone ping.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have to have a cell phone number to run that ping?
Yes.
Okay. And, I mean, how does that work? Not asking for all the science, but how does that work? You give them the cell phone number, then what happens?
I don't know, like you said, the science behind it. From experiences, I've learned that it's helped us find people who are even in crisis situations that are moving about different parts of Columbus. And we were able to, they use the word triangulate a location.
Okay. So you're sitting in the car doing that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And about how far was your patrol car parked from the front door of the apartment?
Probably maybe 2 spots over. It wasn't right in front.
Did you have your window down or your door open or something?
I had my door open.
Okay. And so you started to say that's when things started to unfold. What do you mean by that?
No, moments after they had entered, I could still kind of see the leasing agent in the front area. I heard a scream, and followed by that scream, the gentleman who was outside, initially that went inside, was coming back out, and you could see, I guess he had a pale look on his face, but he was very, like, he's trying to tell me what's going on, and then pointed inside and said, upstairs in the closet, she's in there. Something to that effect. I don't know the words verbatim, but I ran inside.
You said he was pale,
Yeah, well, he appeared pretty freaked out.
pretty freaked out?
Yeah.
Okay. So at that point, do you have reason to go into the apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
So what did you do at that point?
I went inside the apartment and went directly to where he said go. He said upstairs in the bedroom, in the closet. I ran into the apartment and upstairs and to the closet, and the closet door was ajar to where I can see Miss Anderson.
You could see what?
Miss Anderson, sorry.
That's okay. You say the closet door was ajar. Was it wide open or just a little bit open? Tell me more about that.
Half, probably close to halfway open.
Okay. And officer, do you wear a body-worn camera?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you tell me how those get turned on?
I would just push a button right on the front.
And when are you trained to turn those on?
Anytime there's enforcement.
Okay. So during this second time that you're at the apartment, when you're actually going in, did you turn on your camera?
Yes, ma'am.
Did we review that today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Your Honor, if I may. Officer, I'm going to show you something marked for identification purposes, State's Exhibit W, if I may, Your Honor.
Yes, you may.
And the recording, just for the record, is at 00. Officer, do you recognize that first shot?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that?
That's the, from the inside, at that, looking outside, front door.
And what is this point of view coming from?
It's coming from my body camera.
Officer, is there audio always playing on your body-worn camera?
Not the first, I believe, 56 seconds. There's usually no audio, but I think when you hit it, it backtracks a little bit.
I'm going to pause it at 20 seconds. Officer, why did you go look in the kitchen?
Just to make sure there was nobody else in the house. I know the only two went inside, but just at this time, this is already after everything had happened, and I already called for more officers' assistance. But I want to keep an eye on the back as well as the front.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, in your opinion, was this a very big apartment?
Oh,
Okay. When you arrived to Miss Anderson, did you have any indication of life?
no, ma'am.
In your observation, what did you see?
She was bound and gagged, and there was something over her head as well as around her neck, which was attached to the doorknob.
Did she look like she was breathing at all?
No, ma'am.
So at that point, what did you do?
After confirming what had happened after he ran outside and going up there, I immediately went to my radio, advised dispatch, aired for additional cars, and even medical professionals, because even though we know what's going on, we still have to have them respond.
And what do you mean when you say you know what's going on?
That she was deceased.
Can you pronounce somebody dead?
No, ma'am.
Officer, do you, as a patrol officer, investigate homicides?
No.
Whose job is that?
The Detective Bureau.
So how does a detective bureau know to come out to start their process?
Once we have secured the scene, we get in touch with them. Usually we can contact them through the radio, then we have to talk to them on the phone and give them a synopsis of what we have.
And did you do that in this case?
Yes, we did, ma'am.
And when you say secure the scene, what does that mean?
Make sure witnesses that are there are separated and into different cruisers, that we tape off a perimeter so nobody can come anywhere near to protect the integrity of the scene. And that's pretty much, so securing the scene is just making sure that it's secure, nobody else can go inside at that point.
And in this case, did you secure 2 witnesses?
Yes, ma'am.
Did one of them give you a little attitude?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Was that the leasing agent?
A little bit in between. There was she didn't want to stick around for as long as she had to, but I had to keep explaining to her, the integrity of everything that was going on, how we had to explain the process to her a couple of times.
I may have one moment, Your Honor.
You may.
Officer, if you can recall from the video we just watched, when you come straight up the stairs, was there a photo or a painting that was on the ground?
Not that I recall.
If I played it, would that refresh?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Your Honor, if I may.
You may.
I'm going to pause it for the record at 29. What do you see in that still shot?
He has a photo on the bottom leaning up against the wall.
Can you tell what it appears to be?
Looks like Marilyn Monroe.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer, are Cardinal Creek Apartments in Franklin County,
Yes, ma'am.
in the state of Ohio?
Yes, ma'am.
And then finally, when you arrived for the well-being check, or at any point during your times at the apartment, did you see any signs of forced entry?
No, ma'am.
Did you check?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What do you do when you're looking for forced entry? Where are you looking?
We check windows. Usually, if that's the case, screens have been removed, or door frames. You can tell they've been wedged, and the door itself, whether or not it's been kicked. And there was none of that.
Thank you very much, officer. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Van Koop. Cross-examination?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
I'm Isabella Dixon, and I'm one of the attorneys representing Anthony Pardon. Just want to ask a few questions so that we can all be certain of the events that transpired on January 29th, was it, of 2018?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you went out there the first time based on a call that you received for a well-being check, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you know what time that would have been?
I believe it was early afternoon, late morning.
Okay. And at that time, were you wearing your body cam?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you turn your body cam on at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And I believe that you indicated that there was someone from Ms. Anderson's job who was concerned about her well-being at that particular time.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so as a result of the concern, you were not able to get in, right?
Correct.
Did you actually try the door to see if you could get in?
I did not do it.
Okay.
Other officer might have, but
I mean, the first time that you were out there, was there another officer with you?
yes.
Okay. And so there were two of you?
Yes.
Okay. Were both of you wearing body cams or just you?
He works first shift, so we went passing. I'm assuming that he was. We were all issued body cameras around that time, so I don't recall if he had one at that time.
So in your cruiser with you, was there another officer riding with you?
No, ma'am.
But there was another cruiser car out there, and I'm talking about the first time you went out there.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. And did that cruiser stay there the entire time as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so when you went to the leasing office, is it fair to say that you wanted to try to gain entrance into that apartment so that you could do the well-being check, right? Was that your goal?
Well, my goal was to find somebody else that was on a lease who can help us out, at least make contact.
Well, this is on body cam, right?
Yes.
And so aren't you giving Ms. Richardson reasons that she might be able to gain entrance?
Yes, ma'am.
Such as the candle could be a fire hazard.
Yes, ma'am.
Was a potential reason to gain entrance, correct? And when you first went in, you didn't even know if somebody else was on the lease, right?
I'm sorry.
You said that you were going to the leasing office to see if somebody was on the
okay.
lease.
We
So
did.
when you first went there, you don't know that there's anybody else on the lease, right?
Right.
So when you're going there, you're going to try to gain entrance one way or another, right? Is that a fair statement?
That's fair.
to make sure that this young lady is okay?
Legally, but yes,
Okay.
if we could.
I'm not, no trick
Yeah,
questions
no,
here, sir.
it's okay. It's kind of an open-ended question, so.
Okay. So, as a result as a result of your trying to gain entrance, right? You're learning things about the situation, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it your understanding that the leasing agent was not going to just open up that apartment?
Correct.
And the funeral home people where Ms. Anderson worked had already tried that with her, to your understanding, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it your understanding that the funeral home employee had purchased some tires for Ms. Anderson?
I was unaware.
Okay. And you had a body cam on, right?
Yes, ma'am.
If you were to look at your body cam, would that refresh your recollection of your question of that?
About the tires?
Yeah,
Possibly.
okay.
Okay.
And was it your understanding that one of the reasons the apartment manager wouldn't open the apartment is because the funeral home employee seemed a little different?
I don't understand the question.
Okay. Was it your understanding in trying to get this apartment, the leasing manager to open this apartment, somebody else had already tried to get her to open the apartment, right? The funeral home
I don't know
employee.
what his intentions were before we got there.
Okay. Was it your understanding that he had tried to get her to open the apartment?
No, ma'am. I know he tried to talk to the leasing agent before we did, because he said, hey, I already tried talking to the leasing agent. And that's kind of where, the flag went up, because I'm taking this from the beginning when I get there. And then that's when I decided to go and talk to her myself and say, well, what do you think about what's going on? And whether or not she has seen Miss Anderson around, or if there was somebody else who had, that she lived with, because I didn't know if she lived alone, or if she was, if there's anybody else we can contact to try to get a hold of her,
Okay.
to make it a little easier.
So you were having a conversation with the leasing agent on your own, Ms. Richardson, right?
Yeah,
And was it your understanding from that conversation that she could not legally open the apartment?
yes, ma'am.
For you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Or for that funeral home employee, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And was it your understanding that the funeral home employee had been at the wrong apartment, possibly?
I don't know Miss Anderson, and it could be a possibility. We want to make sure he's knocking at the right door, but he was pretty sure he was at the right residence when we were there.
And so, do you know how long you were there that first time?
No, ma'am.
An hour?
I don't recall.
Okay. But your body cam would tell us, right? Somewhat?
It might.
Okay. And that's the reason you wear a body cam, isn't it?
It is.
So that we can know, you can know, you have a record of what happened
Yes, ma'am.
whenever you turn it on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so you've got a body cam from the very first time that you went out there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you've got a body cam from the second time you went out there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And the body cam footage that we viewed here, was that from the first time or the second time?
The second time.
And is that the entire body cam footage?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And so when you went out there the first time, eventually you gained entrance. Or not you, but the apartment manager decided to open it up, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Because she got permission from someone who was on the lease, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And you were standing there when she called to gain permission, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And when she made the first call to get permission, was she given permission right away?
No, ma'am.
She had to wait for the person to call back, right?
I believe that's correct.
Do you know how long she waited for the person to call back to give her permission to enter in the apartment?
It wasn't very long, but as far as time scale, I couldn't say.
But your body cam would tell us that, wouldn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when she ultimately, we're talking about the first time, when she ultimately got permission to go in, you went with her to the apartment, but not in the apartment, correct?
That's correct.
And you said she was in there for about 5 minutes.
It wasn't there very long.
Okay,
Safe to say about 5 minutes.
okay, and she came back out, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you do any follow-up questions with the apartment manager, Ms. Richardson, when she came back out?
I don't recall. I know.
So, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I don't recall.
Okay, so you didn't ask her about the condition of the apartment, if anything looked out of place, if there was anything that looked like foul play could have taken place?
I don't recall.
If you don't recall if you asked her that?
Right.
And you were there on a wellness check though, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but didn't ask any of those questions?
I didn't say that.
You just don't recall
I
asking
just don't
those
recall what
questions.
was asked. Yes, ma'am.
So you may have asked him, but you don't remember asking him?
Correct.
Okay. Did you have your body cam on at that time?
I believe so, ma'am.
Okay. And now, the second time, right, that you go back out there, that's based on different concerns about the same individual. Is
Correct.
that fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so the second time when you go back out, the apartment manager is standing on the outside of the apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
And who else is standing on the outside of the apartment that you recognize? Anybody?
There was, I believe there was a male and a female that was standing out there with her.
Okay. And did the male flag you down?
When I pulled up, he was kind of trying to get my attention at the
Okay.
same time.
And did the male tell you anything?
At that time, I don't recall a conversation with him before he went inside.
So you stood outside while the male went inside.
Yes, ma'am.
Did Ms. Richardson go inside with the male?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you were standing outside?
I was by my cruiser, and I was on my radio.
Okay. Did they leave the door open? Did they go through the front door, first of all?
Yes, ma'am.
Did they leave the door open?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so how long were they in there that time?
Not very long, a few moments.
Okay.
I can't recall exactly how long.
Okay, and so then what happens next? You're outside, they're inside, what happens?
I hear the man scream
Okay,
and come out, and hopefully that answered your question. I mean, that's what happened next. He started screaming after he was in, and that immediately caught my attention.
okay. And who came out first, the male or the female, or Ms. Richardson?
I don't recall.
Okay, but both of them came out,
Yes, ma'am.
okay? Did they ever go back in?
When I was upstairs, I can't say for sure.
What about when you were downstairs?
They were standing by the doorway.
So the male or the female never came back in when you were downstairs?
Correct.
Okay. And you have a body cam that would tell us accurately what happened, correct?
Yes, it would be more accurate.
And so did the male tell you anything after he had come downstairs?
Just screaming about what was going on upstairs, and I need to go check.
Did he tell you he had touched the wire?
Not at that time.
Okay. And your body cam, again, would be an accurate depiction of what happened?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you said something about securing the scene. Is that your job?
Yes, ma'am.
And what does it mean to secure the scene?
It means a lot of different things. Getting the witnesses secured in cruisers, securing the perimeter, putting up some scene tape so nobody crosses that into the scene.
And I think you also indicated on direct you want to make sure the witnesses are separated.
Yes, ma'am.
Why is that?
Just to help the integrity of each of the witnesses, and the detectives, when they come out, when they speak to them, that they can have individual statements.
When you say the integrity of the witnesses, please explain to the jury, what do you mean integrity of the witnesses?
So we don't have the witnesses talking too much about what's going on within, I guess, the scene. We try to keep them as separate as soon as possible, just they don't, I guess, can't talk too much about it.
And you want the statements to be that person's statement, right? You don't want that person's statement to be tainted by another person's statement, do you? Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay, just 1 second. Okay. Your Honor, may we approach?
You may. On or off? On the record or off? Excuse us, ladies and gentlemen.
Person's statement to be tainted by another person's statement, do you? Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay, just 1 second.
All right, okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'm going to excuse you for about, hopefully no more than about 5, maybe 10 minutes. So I need you back in the jury room, really in about 5 to 7 minutes, okay? Again, remember the admonitions that I've given you with respect to discussing this case among yourself or with anyone else. All rise for the jury. All right, you may be seated, everyone. Ms. Dixon, if you could go over with me and Coolant just to see the part where you'd like it queued up.
You want to come up with me?
Ms. Rouse, you do have a way to just show it to the witness, you know. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. No, it's
Yes.
okay.
I know, you got
Where
it.
do you want me to go all the way to the back from the beginning?
Yes. That's fine, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, come on, you need to come outside. I can listen to it. Okay. That's okay. 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 Yeah.
Stop at 151.
Do we need to place anything on the record at this point in time?
Well, I guess the state's concern at this point is the last issue I raised when we were at sidebar regarding, since there was the agreement to only play part, and now they've heard the word body worn camera 20 times. We're concerned that it gives the appearance that we're not providing evidence to the jury, so we would either request that we work some sort of stipulation that the parties agree to tell the jury, or we would ask the court to instruct them that the portion that they saw was by agreement of the parties and the rest of it.
Yeah. I was like, come on, you need to come outside. I can listen to it.
I think that Ms. Dixon has made it clear that every single time he turned his body-worn camera on, and that was not the entirety of it. She asked him that, and then she also said that the other officer that responded had a body-worn camera, and then said, well, if this person said that, that would have been on the body-worn camera, right? I mean, and so it's clear that all of the things that she has used the word body-worn camera in her questioning were not on the minute we played, which again was at the defense request.
And at least my concern, Judge, is to suggest that we either didn't give them something or that we're hiding something from them, and the state wants to rebut that seeming inference.
Okay, I don't have a problem either. If you want to do a stipulation that we can provide to the jury after, or if you want me to instruct the jurors.
I think we would just prefer that it be done before they go home today.
Okay.
And Judge, I would like to see what that's all about in terms of what instructions are given. I don't want the jury to think that the state of Ohio is not providing us with everything. We stipulate that the state of Ohio has provided us with discovery. But as far as why it wasn't played in its entirety, I don't know what the court can instruct on that.
No, what I would indicate to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that during this witness's testimony that they had an opportunity to see portions of his body camera. There were other portions that they did not see, and they did not see those portions by agreement of the attorneys. That's what I would say.
And that would be acceptable to the state.
Well, I mean, just like the state's concerned with, you know, them not thinking, I don't want to think that we're violating the agreement either.
Your Honor, I asked the question because he couldn't remember things. That's why, that's the only reason I brought it up, because he couldn't remember things.
Well,
But the concern that I have is what was expressed during sidebar, which is there was an agreement that there was only going to be a portion that was going to be used. Clearly, we've used now a little bit more than what was agreed to. And so, obviously, if that agreement hadn't been made, then, okay, it's fair game. Because of the fact that that agreement has been made and what apparently has happened now is something slightly outside of that agreement.
But Your Honor, let's be,
Hold on, one at a time.
if we're being clear, even if there was no agreement, there, I believe, would be a foundation that we could lay to get the whole, to get that whole video played. I would agree. And so I actually, when I wanted to play it in its entirety, felt like this would have solved the whole problem. Saying, now here's the entire video. So there was no intention on my part to imply that the state is hiding anything.
No, I'm not taking that, but and this is just my assumption, if there were no agreement, then the state may have played the video in its entirety for the jurors to see. And it was based upon the agreement that they did not. So if there were not an agreement, I agree with you. I think both of you would have had the opportunity to play as much of it as you wanted to.
But Judge, I think the issue here is Isabella's questioning of the officer about other cams. I don't think we violated any agreement because they're not going to play any more of the video than we agreed. There's not going to be any plan of any more video than we agreed because you already ruled.
that's not the issue. The issue is the multiple references to the rest of the body cam that they haven't seen that is suggestive of the fact that we hid something from the jury. And I'm not saying that Ms. Dixon cannot ask about people's inability to recall things. However, there are ways to do it where you don't say the rest of the body cam in every single question. Is there anything that would refresh your recollection? Did you have on a body camera? Would reviewing that help with your memory? And then we could have taken a break instead of 10 or 15 questions that talked about the rest of the body camera. That's the issue.
I don't think there was an agreement that we would not question any witness as far as other body cams. We would have stuck to that. There was no agreement. The agreement was that we would only play certain portions.
That's not what we're doing there.
Right. But here's the concern. Again, if there were an agreement as to, I don't know, let's use a different example, that only certain photographs would be used. And then you start asking questions about photographs that were agreed that they weren't going to be used. So there's now an implication out there about these additional photographs. And what about these additional photographs that everyone's talking about now that were never presented to them? Just like the stipulation that I read earlier, that Defense Exhibit 1 was a portion of Rachael Anderson's apartment rental paperwork. What I'm going to provide to them is just that the video that they saw was just a portion of the video camera or the body-worn camera that the officer had. I don't know that that implies anything one way or the other, just telling them about the evidence that they have. And again, I don't know if this is something that we'll be dealing with later as to whether there's going to be a move to admit that. And if so, my assumption is that what would be admitted is what was agreed to by the parties in advance, not the video in its entirety. No, we can admit the other part for appellate purposes, for any arguments that you want to make. But if at this point the defense were to move to admit it in its entirety, okay, then I would have some issues or concerns at that point in time of doing so.
And I think that the state's concern is that as you just said, Defense Exhibit 1, we agreed to the admissibility and the authenticity of it, but since it's on the stipulation, the parties have agreed to it. And so since the body camera is not now, that's why we're raising this, because now it looks different, because there's a portion in those apartment records, but that's by agreement of the parties. And so that there's no negative connotation to that, and so that's why we're raising it.
But I don't think we've read the stipulation yet, so I don't have a problem with saying that it's a portion of the body cam.
Yep. That what was viewed by the jurors
Is a
today
portion of-
was just a portion of the,
By agreement of the parties.
correct.
Right?
I didn't have any issue
Larry.
with that. I don't think he did. Did you?
Larry did.
I just want to say that there was any mistake on our part either.
I'm not blaming anyone for anything. Okay. Probably the appropriate time, just so that I'm not drawing any more attention to it than there needs to be, is after the testimony, just letting the jurors know that what they had an opportunity to see was just a portion.
By agreement of the parties.
By agreement of the parties, yes.
That's the important part, Judge.
Okay. So, okay. Now, Officer Sclafani.
Sir.
Okay. Having had an opportunity to review what you had an opportunity to review outside the presence of the jury, does that refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then you'll be allowed to ask them questions. All right, anything else we need to get on the record at this time before bringing the jurors back in?
Nothing to say.
All right. Okay, Mrs. Harper. Thank you, everyone. All rise. You may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Dixon, you may inquire.
Thank you. Having been able to refresh your recollection, Officer Sclafani, the male walked the perimeter of the apartment once you got back downstairs, isn't that correct?
Can you restate the question?
Okay. The male walked around the living room of the apartment, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the male said he touched the wire, isn't that also correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Dixon. Redirect.
One moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Officer, just briefly, when your recollection was refreshed, do you remember the demeanor of that male at that point?
He was crying and on the phone.
He was crying and what?
He was crying and he was on the phone.
Okay. And I think Ms. Dixon said that he walked around the living room. what do you remember him? Was he walking around the living room? Was he touching everything? Or what was he doing?
When I came down the stairs, was pacing to the right side of the living room, which is opposite the door, and then came back. So he walked to one end of the living room and then back to the door.
And then what did you ask him to do?
Step outside.
And did he do that?
Yes, ma'am.
And what was his demeanor when you asked him to step outside?
He was still carrying on and then changed his attention to who he was talking to on the phone.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Van Poolen. Recross?
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Officer Sclafani, I'm going to hand you
Yes,
what's
ma'am.
been marked Defense Exhibit 2. Does that look like the gentleman who was walking around the apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And Officer Sclafani, the mail came from outside back into the apartment, isn't that correct?
I would say he may have. After I went inside, I didn't know what happened behind me at that moment.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Dixon. Okay, officer, you can step down. You're not to discuss your testimony with anyone while this case is still pending.
I understand, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, during the testimony of Officer Scafani, okay, you only saw a portion of the body-worn camera. You saw the portion of the body-worn camera that was agreed to by the parties in this case, okay? That was just a portion that you had a chance to see. I just want to make sure that the record is clear and that you understand that. All right. Okay, I'm going to release you for the day. Meet you back here tomorrow morning, again before 9 a.m. And we will get started as close to that time as we can. All right. Again, remember the admonitions that I've given you with respect to discussing this case among yourselves or with anyone else. Obviously, okay, you've heard the opening statements of counsel and some of the evidence. And again, invariably, what's occurred in court today is going to be available to friends and family. And they are going to want to begin telling you what they had a chance to hear or see. And you need to make it very clear to them that they cannot, nor obviously can you seek or obtain any information outside this courtroom. Their perspective, their understanding does not matter, okay, and should not be part of your consideration. At some point in time, I will advise you that you need to decide this case for yourself, but only after having discussion with the other members of the jury. Okay? The time for those discussions obviously are not now, nor can you decide the case for yourself if you're having conversations with people outside the jury who are giving you their opinion. And so as I indicated yesterday, the great thing is you can talk about anything but the case. So please, have a safe trip home. Have a safe trip back here tomorrow. See you a little bit before 9, or get here before 9. We'll get started as close to that time as we can. All rise for the jury.
Take that.
Very good. Out to see everyone by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Thank you very much.